going into Talon Esports and you joining APAC and playing in a brand new environment, in a brand new region, a brand new challenge altogether. Um, you're gonna be paired up with Cruz, Jit Boys Band, and Lenny. A very good team, a team that has potential.
Hmm.
How have you been familiarizing yourself with your new teammates? Given that it's a pretty international roster, a much different one than the ones that you've been throughout your career.
Hmm. Um, so I'm used to playing with Dan already because we were ex-teammates on Squirrel Squad. So it's nice to have, someone from, my old days to play with. It's, comfortability. Um, Getting used to Chip Boys, Cruz, and Lenny though is, uh, it's been, slower because, it's completely different playstyle. They're APAC. It's not really so much getting used to my teammates. It's getting used to the environment itself and like how these teams play in APAC. That's been the biggest like, oh shit, like this is different. Um, it's not been too much of a struggle though, but I do notice that they play a lot stupider. But then it makes me question like what's actually stupid because it works. Like if it works, is it really stupid? So I've definitely like kind of grown from that, um, and like have like resisted the urge of like getting angry over it. It's like okay, like instead of getting mad over this stupid shit, like I should really look at it and be like, okay, this guy's solo peeking it through a smoke, but like, I mean, if it's working, like, I don't know, like, what are they doing like with this? And like, if the, it's a complete. What I'm trying to say is it's a completely different game, and what works in a different region might not work in another region, and vice versa. And overall, like, the people there are just way more confident and play with fucking balls. Like, they do not care about it. That's been the biggest thing to get used to is like the way they play, very aggressive, a lot less fundamental, more instinctual plays. But yeah.
Going back to your process of familiarization within Talon, um, you mentioned about how it was like the sort of playstyle that you've seen within APAC is stupid, and I want to dive deeper into exactly what that stupidity
Mhm.
means.
Okay, I don't know about stupid, because that's my first thought. It's just stupid, but it made me look at the game from a different perspective, right? That it's uh, just taking fights and doing that sort of stuff is just a part of the game. It made me realize, and what is considered a bad play in a 50-50 for a player like, Forsaken or something is not a 50-50. It's a 65-35, it's a 60-40. It's like, if you have it's any slight advantage and you're more comfortable in that position, then I feel like you should just do it. And it makes you look at the game from a different perspective. But I don't. What I'm trying to say, what I'm not trying to say that ATAC is stupider. Although that was my first impression, but it's definitely just it's different. It's not typical NA fundamental, right? Like because NA like almost every NA team has CS background, has players that have CS background, so it's a lot slower, more tactical. But in APAC, it's less of that for sure.
APAC has been led by very various good teams, specifically in Tier One. But I can say that like the whole onus of its playstyle in a way can be credited to Paper X, the team that finished runners up in Champions, and the one team that whose playstyle is largely around aggressiveness and just moving fast and doing so in a way that kind of stifles their opponents who already has like their own sort of formula of how they go about their business. But when they face off against Paper Rex, then it's kind of thrown off into an upteenth degree. And so, would you say that it's sort of similar to how the teams like Paper X have played when it comes to observing playstyles in APAC, and also, if one might say, covering your team's playstyle in particular?
I wouldn't compare every team to Paper X, but in terms of like, so Paper X, although they take a lot of fights, they have phenomenal spacing and they have like very good util timing, which makes it good, which is why they're so consistent. But the teams in APAC, they have what do you call it? Like a lot of the tier 2 teams that I've played in APAC, they kind of do what Paper X does, but without the util timing or without the best spacing, or like they'll do stuff a lot more alone. Paper X, although like they play very fast, like they do things together, right? But um, that's why what they do is so consistent. Is why they're so good. But some of these other teams, they just do less of that. But they have the mechanical skill. Like the biggest comparison I'll make from tier 2 NA to tier 2 APAC is tier 2 NA, like you can kind of dominate tier 2 NA if you just have a really good mechanical player, like a superstar. Like you put like Aspas, right, in a NA tier 2 game, he'll just dominate off of just pure mechanics. But APAC, like even the tier 2 players, tier 3 scene there, like they can all aim and you can't really rely on that, and they do those sorts of things. But the overall play style is less teamwork, more fighty. I think Paper X, although it may seem like they do, stupid stuff, they actually, if you actually look at their gameplay, they do everything together. Like what they do is all like together and with teamwork. So to compare every other team to Paper X is an insult to Paper X. I think they're actually very they're good. They're a very good team. They play together as a team with like they play wild but together. And our play style is um to be fair, we haven't scrimmed enough yet together. It's been kind of rough with me being in America for the last 2 weeks, but also our trial period was kind of scuffed as well. But in general, we haven't had a lot of time to scrim, so I don't think we've been able to find our play style yet or our stride. But our goal is to bring the NA sort of play style to APAC and be a lot more tactical and fundamental. I think that's the team that we strive to be. But at the same time, firepower is important. And making those sorts of random plays can be good. So we have a mixture of like we have someone like Jit Boys on our team who brings that APAC kind of play style. So it's gonna be like a mixture of both for sure next year.
What about like comms? Like what is the comms gonna be like? Because sure, you had Ban as someone that you've played regularly with or slash against in North America, and I believe Cruz is good in English, so I guess he's the English speaking guy. I'm not sure about Lenny and Jit Boys, and so like, has there been any sort of difficulty in like communication aspect, like English communication aspect, or anything
No,
else of the like?
yeah, comms will be fully in English. Cruz is fluent. Jit Boy or Lenny is fluent. Jit's the only one who's struggling a little bit, but it's given him more time to focus on his shooting. He's doing more listening and more like he's doing less talking, more shooting, and it's for his role. He's playing Sentinel. It's not too terrible for him to play that way. But obviously, ultimately, we want his English to get on our level. But it's not as bad as if my if the IGL's English was bad or if my English was bad, and if like when the flash initiator and the duelist can't communicate with each other, then there's obviously a problem. But with Jit, he's playing Sentinel, he's kind of on his own. It's like his lonesome anyway. It hasn't been the biggest issue, but it's like I said, we're definitely gonna work on it, but it's not too bad.
You mentioned also a little bit about like scrimming against tier two APAC teams. However, as much as you can at this moment in time. What has been the like what kind of tier two teams have you been able to scrim against, and what's been your biggest takeaway from those teams in particular?
Um, Mechanical skill is the biggest thing. Like I said, tier two teams in NA. What separates them is usually just talent. All the talent, or like by tier two, I mean um, like the challengers teams, right? Not every challengers team, like what do you call it, has like a superstar or like a superstar aimer. But like it seems every tier two team in APAC, I think we've played. Um, I don't know the names of like Boom, for example. I guess you call them a tier two team. They have that one duelist. I forget his name, but he's insane. But they can all shoot back like very well. The thing is like in NA when you're scrimming, when you're like starting off in a team and you're just doing trials, typically what you do is you scrim against the lower competition just to like implement strats and implement shit and just have shit down. Like you lower the skill level a bit to run your shit and like practice your stuff. But that's what we're trying to do in APAC, and we're like scrimming lower competition. But the lower competition, they all have like super cracked aim, and they just disrupt everything. I'll give you an example right now. DRX prospects, we scrim them,
Yep.
and like they run like these weird comps and like double duelist stuff and scrims. I guess they're just practicing stuff or whatever, but they would like I don't want to leak stuff. I'm not gonna say maps or exact comps, but they run really hectic stuff and they just are just doing like just walking up bottom mid or stuff like that for 2 seconds in the round, doing stuff like that and just shooting. It's like ridiculous, but like in NA, like you don't see that. Usually the lower, like usually the teams give you more respect. It's like these guys don't respect anything. They just fight you.
That said, do you feel like you've gotten used to playing in this different sort of environment in APAC playstyle wise, pace wise? Do
Um,
you feel like you gotten used to it completely, or you still need like more reps in to make that possible?
nah, at this point I've gotten used to it. I don't find myself getting frustrated or being surprised by it. You want to the way I've approached these scrims are you want to keep your gun out more and focus on your crosshair more, at least initially, so that they don't you have to set the stage, and early on in the practice you need to be like, okay, you're not running through that smoke versus me, bro. I'm pulling the smoke. You don't want to be caught off guard, so that's like how we've been dealing with it. Just be gun out at the beginning of the scrum, and then make them respect you, and then you play from there.
Mhm. And looking at the entire board within VCT Pacific, you're going to be joining alongside a very good line of duelists within this league, which is already competitive as it is. In addition to new faces, I mean, of course, the obvious example is the joining Bleed and becoming the duelist within that regard, and of course, something from PaperX needs no further elaboration within those two people.
When's
Um,
this when's this interview coming out?
I probably like late December, like sometime after Christmas. So yeah.
I will
So
not on that then.
yeah. Uh, that said, where do you see like where do you like how do you see the competition on the duelist role with yourself considered?
Um, uh, the biggest advantage I think going into this year as a duelist compared to the other duelists are, I think there are many people who mechanically are probably better than me, but at the end of the day, um, I think the advantage I have and what sets me apart from these other players, and the reason why Talon picked me up, is because I provide, I'd say, a lot more outside of just shooting. Um, I think I'm very vocal, like in terms of comparatively to other duelists. I'm probably a lot more vocal, or probably the most vocal duelist there is. Actually, I want to be. I'll keep myself humble, but like, I think the other duelists don't really think as much, but they don't have to because they're surrounded by great talent. But I think what I provide and what Talon needed was, another person who provides ideas in the mid round and things that they want to do. But I try not to, when I play against other players, like think, oh, I gotta diff this guy, or oh, at the end of the day, like it's team versus team. I'm not really concerned if I go -10 against something, or I go +10 against him. Really, if I win, I win. If I lose, I lose, and that's like the only thing that matters. That's always how I've kind of viewed things. I think when you look at like VLR or Reddit, that's what everyone seems to be concerned about. But that's why it's important to not care about those and not look at those things, because you know I know that I know more than all these people, so I don't really care what they think. The only thing that matters basically is winning, and I try not to compare myself. It's whatever.
I mean, but then again, like I can also like would it be fair to say to that you also have had times to make those comparisons, because like it's one thing to play against tier 2 teams last year or this past year, but it's another thing to go from that to now facing off against the players like something in EA, players that have scaled the mountaintop when it comes to pro Valorant,
Yeah, sure.
and have them face off against you. Like, does that like do you get like do you still like do that? Do you help? Do you not help yourself in making those comparisons?
Well,
Also,
I make the comparisons in the sense that, look, I played against Noob not last year, and that guy's fucking cracked. I don't care if I'm playing something next year, realistically. Like, I've played against Tex, I've played against even Ye. I played Ye in an official last year. Like,
yes, that's
you
right.
know what I mean? Like, I'm, I know I'm on the level, right? So I don't really, like, that's the most comparison I'll make is I've played against these guys, I'm going to APAC, I'm playing against something, like, he's on the same level as me. Like, we're at the end of the day, like I deserve to be here. So that's at most the comparison I'll make, just to to not psych myself out.
Of course, I like that. Stay humble, stay grounded. Make sure you don't get a too big of an ego, and just have a clear and level-headed mind when VCT ramps up again later on or early on in 2024 next year. Um, Specifically talking about the duelist role, still within that, I'm kind of interested. I'm intrigued in hearing about your perspective as to how that role has progressed, and also in a way morphed since the end of Champions up until this very conversation, what with like the whole nerfing of Jet, and maybe players opting for other duelists, specifically Rays,
Mm-hmm.
and how that has kind of um transformed or maybe progressed. How do you view the whole progression of the duelist role
Yeah.
since end
So
of last season up until now?
so I love the change. I think it's part of the reason why Talon picked me up in the first place. So my agent pool is, I made sure to not be considered a complete Jet one trick, because I knew it was coming. Like, I knew the Jet was gonna get nerfed, obviously. But yeah. So I know how to play Jet, Raze, Neon, Phoenix, right? If you consider him useful. The only duelist I don't know how to play is Yoru. I haven't learned how to play him. But I'd say my Asian pool is pretty deep when it comes to other duelist players. So the jet nerf actually has helped me. Raze being in the meta, Neon being in the meta, that's all helped me. Because teams don't um, the people that can only play jet, if you've noticed, have sort of fallen off or been removed out of the tier 1 scene / tier 2 scene. And now, yeah, like you said, Raze. If you don't know, if you're a duelist player and you don't know how to play Raze, you're essentially not a true duelist player, and it's kind of hard to find, a team for yourself if you can't play those agents. But it has helped me in terms of finding opportunities. So
And I also do like the change in the sense that we Valorant has become a game in which we don't really have to, or we don't have to look at one trick ponies specifically, like in Jet and stuff like that. It requires versatility and 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 a way for players to play different roles, to be a flex player and not just um uh, um specialize in one role. And I feel like that's kind of opened up the game in a new, different avenue uh, from this year and hopefully well into the future. And how do you view like this sort of new stage that the game is in, not just in the duelist role, but also in other roles as well?
um, it's exciting. I think it's healthier. It's healthy for the game. Ultimately, like Riot is gonna like Valorant's gonna end up being a game where 5 years from now there's gonna be like 30 new agents, right? It's gonna be pretty crazy. The game is like Riot wants the game to go in that direction. It seems that's why they're constantly balancing things. I think Jet Chamber was like the Jet Chamber meta was probably, as a viewer, I think the most boring meta to watch. Um, as a player, it was kind of fun if you played Jet or Chamber, but as a viewer, I think it got pretty stale. Just watching, one person just drop 40 kills every map, and everyone else just doing nothing. The game revolving around one character on every single map, that being Chamber. But when the game's like that, it's pretty boring. So it's good that the jet change did inspire people to just, do, Raze, Neon, that people are streaming with like Yoru. People are playing, a lot more weird comps, and that's how the game is meant to be played, in my opinion. That's what Riot intended. They want people to be creative and, do different things and make anything work. There shouldn't always be like one meta. I think that's unhealthy, but overall, like it's good. It's healthy for the game and it's exciting. It's fun to play against as well.
Mhm. And with that said, um, what are your expectations for 2024 with this talent team and competing in Pacific, vying for masters and champions and the like? What's going to be like your base of expectations for next year?
So my personal goal for this year is just to get used to the whole APAC, just to get used to it here. Um, as for our team goals, I think we can very easily, or very, it's very possible that we can get top four. Um, but I think our main focus right now is to just kind of get comfortable playing with each other and finding our sort of play style and finding what works for us. We're gonna try to be, we're gonna try to do everything we can to be, creative as possible and work with what we have. We definitely come into this year with some disadvantages, considering that we basically were the last team to make changes and do all this stuff. But this next 2 months is going to be pretty important for seeing how well I think we can do. But off the top of my head, I think we have the talent. We have the right pieces to get at least top four if all things go well. But definitely, in general, is just this do better than we did last year. And by we, I mean I think the last iteration placed ninth, which is pretty unfortunate. But I think that's why the management wanted to go the route of international this year and see what works.
Hmm. And it's kind of interesting in a way looking at the roster changes that was made this so far in this off season. Instead of like normally traditionally like in other esports, when people look at NA, they look at NA teams bringing in imported players from like Europe and other regions. But now, recently in Valorant, it's sort of become the opposite, in which it's the NA players that are jumping ship to other leagues, other regions,
Mhm.
and just as a way to stay competitive or become competitive. I mean, case in point. I mean, you yourself. And there's also Rossi, and then Narrate was just recently announced as a member of Carmine Core. There's other people, of course, Yay, of course, obviously, and other people that I can't really name off the top of my head. But it does really speak to the level of where North America is at individual wise. And so, um, why do you think that's the case? Like for this off season in particular, for North American players to go to different regions.
Um, like I said before, NA just has. I think people kind of underestimate how much talent NA has. When happened, um, when franchising happened a year ago, a lot of people got left in the dirt or like left behind because there was only 5 spots for Americans. Like, although um, all of the Americas had 10 spots, just like EMEA has 10 spots, Asia Pacific has 10 spots. 5 of those spots went to the Brazilians and the Latin Americans, but only 5 NA orgs were able to get a spot, meaning only 25 players out of the deep NA pool got to be in tier one. That left a crap ton of people, stuck in tier two NA. But and people have this stigma that tier two NA is just trash because it's tier two. But I think everyone is just forgetting, franchising just happened. People are just like the whole point of this first year is to figure out who's good. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And people just people think tier two NA is just complete garbage, which is well, I'm sure most people don't think that. But the vast majority of like the people like fans that don't deeply follow Valorant tend to seem to forget that this isn't like the NBA where it's been around for 60 years and everyone's established and the G League is filled with bums. Bro, the G League was made a year ago and the real league was made a year ago. Like
Yeah.
people really just forget how the talent. But I think the reason that being said, not that being said, but like I said, yeah, it's just there's limited spots. There's only 25 people that were able to make it. I think NA, that being because of that, there's just a lot of teams that what do you call it? A lot of players that just got left behind that do have the potential to what do you call it? To play in tier one.
Mhm. And also, also in consideration of the fact that you with tier two as it is and teams being able to face off against each other, it provided an opportunity for individuals to stand out and basically promote themselves in a way to those other teams in tier one, not just in North America, but also in EMEA and also Pacific. Because um, with Ascension, we had the Gar slash G2 get promoted to the league, so we don't, so uh, 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 people didn't really have to worry about like snatching players from that team since they're already at tier one. But also we've seen like examples like M80 with a good number of their players joining North American teams such as Sentinels. I think John QD became the IGL for Sentinels. I think, and other people that also joined other teams, and also like Tex, which I'm remembering just now, joined Leviathan in
Mm.
Latin America. It's also a good example, and so it's like it reinforces the notion, as you mentioned, about how we're just starting out this whole process of like challengers as it is currently, and also the partnership leagues as well, with it entering year two, and also like the whole Valorant scene entering into year one, two, three, year four. year four in general. And so it's sort of like a wait and see type of approach when it comes to observing like the whole talent development aspect of the scene. But in a way, I can understand about how people might not like this whole sort of format as it is, since it kind of restricts access to tier one. You know, with all of the issues that are pointed out, and
Yeah.
so that said, regarding what I said about the talent development aspect of the scene, um, what do you feel is one thing that one change that should be made in order to better improve that aspect so that players can build on their careers for the future?
Very easy. I think Riot needs to implement like what do you call it? Riot needs to make like if they can bundles, for challengers for tier two, tier two bundles, right? You can make them cheap. You can make them like you can make them. They don't even have to be that expensive. If I'm being honest, like there's people that will buy them, and Riot makes so much money as it is off of selling skins. I think they could afford to, if they want the tier one scene to flourish, like you need a good tier two scene. I feel like, and with how good the tier two scene is already as it is, like, and with the limited number of spots, like the skill gap between tier one and tier two is like so close, but like the benefits that players are getting are just like I said, like my teammates on Turtle Troop, all of them deserve to be tier one or have what it takes to be tier one. And then there's people who are tier one and they're like they're making $0, and then the skill gap is like here, but the pay gap is here. You know what I mean? So it's like, what's the incentive? And it's like when you're not paying these players and like there's no actual incentive to be in the tier two scene. If you're not like a super team, then it's like there's no incentive for these players to keep getting better and make it to tier one or to push through. I was only fortunate enough because I went 2 years of being unpaid, and that's something most people aren't going to do. I was only fortunate to do that because I made money from I made money from content creation before, and I had a little bit of money to lean on. But most people won't be a free agent for 2 years. They would quit way before that. So if you want this to be sustainable for people, you need to figure out some sort of way to give orgs incentives, and that could be making a bundle for tier two, and then giving that money, splitting that money with orgs that want to invest in tier two, invest in players, and then like any sort of living. Like honestly, like Turtle Troop would have played for like $1,000 a month, but we couldn't even get that, man. Like we would have paid for very cheap. We would have played for very cheap, but it's just there's like almost no incentive for orgs to even do that, so it's like ridiculous. But I do see tier two dying if something doesn't happen though in terms of like actual incentive. But yeah.
I think Riot is just announced that they're going to do bundles for all of the teams in tier one. I
Tier
believe
one, yeah.
only tier one, and I don't think not for tier two. I believe, and so it kind of does. It shows you the notion that yeah, they're they kind of it reflects of what you're envisioning, but we're kind of not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, just to go on, like the amount of the amount of talent in tier two that can play in tier one is actually kind of absurd though. Like most of them, the only reason they're not in tier one is because they're signed already in tier two. I think everybody on Moist, what do you call it, Moist Shopify could play tier one. Basically everybody on OXG could play in tier one.
Yep.
But they're just held, they're just signed. But people really, it's sort of just ridiculous. So what I'm saying is the skill gap, people don't realize that tier one and Two has in NA at least is like it's this close. Like it's like almost non-existent. Like the gap there,
I mean,
and
not only that, we even have like tier 1 players that are joining tier 2 teams. So it's so, like example
because there are
BCJ.
there are because there are some orgs like MAD that are paying a lot of money, and it is sort of worthwhile to make those changes or like to make the change, and just play in tier 2 because there are the orgs here and there, but there's only so many of them, right? But overall, like the smaller orgs like Dignitas, Space Station, like they'll never get in tier like they'll never get into Valorant in tier 2 just because of like how little incentive there is, right? Unless you're super org like M80 or more Shopify, then there's almost no point.
Mhm. That said, I'm kind of curious about whether there was difficulty in bringing in players to like throughout the season because of course you brought in Dazzle, Rossi, Mame, Tick throughout the year in addition to a few coaches here and there. Was
Mhm.
there difficulty in trying to bring in players to the lineups amidst these changes because of the fact that you guys were unsigned and had no org?
For the most part, we got the players we wanted, and we didn't really have difficulty getting anyone else. At least not for the explicit reason of pay. I think we wanted to get. I think we were planning on getting like Stewie 2K for in place of Mame, but he said no for I forget the reason, but it wasn't for money. It could have been no for money. Some people don't actually say these things, but that's the only player I could think of where they might have not played because we were a free agent. But I think yeah, for the most part, we got everyone we wanted. Although Tig did end up like saying straight up, like if we don't get signed via X amount of time, I'm leaving because I got to focus on my own stuff.
Yep.
He said something along the lines of that, or like he's not going to play next year if we don't qualify, or something. But he basically, he made it clear that if we don't get signed, then it's probably like he's probably going to quit or something. But he ended up getting sent to phase. It worked out for him. He got a little paycheck before actual retirement, but um, I think now he has quit because of that, because it's dead.
Yep.
Esports is dead. Or not esports, but tier 2 in terms of making money is dead.
Mhm. Interesting that you brought up Stewie 2K because I remember in our first interview you mentioned about the team, the nation in which he was a part of. That was like one of the
Mm.
biggest obstacles that you felt you had to overcome in order to qualify, and how that was like one of the highlights of that journey to qualifying for challengers. And so,
Mhm.
how close was that move to with Stewie?
um I'm not sure. I think he seemed interested. So Tig wanted to just get him. Like Tig wanted Stewie if he was down. But I think Stewie said that he's in the process of moving and doesn't know how much he can commit to. There might have been other reasons, the fact that we're a free agent or whatever, but I do think that he would have been down had the right things been in place. But unfortunately, I think his main reason was he's in the process of moving and he doesn't know how much time he can commit. So that was that. But I think he would have been down.
It would have
I'm
been
not sure though.
it would have been such a move. Like it would have. Oof, imagine the hype that it might have built up with having Stewie getting
Yeah.
into Valorant. It would have been such a exciting move, but still. Uh, that said, looking at everything that we have discussed in this conversation and everything that you've been able to talk about, which I appreciate you doing so. Um, what has been the biggest thing that helped you the most throughout your Valorant career, looking at the start up until now?
Um, I think constantly being in an environment where everyone's motivated and happy to grind is something that I'm very thankful for. I think every time like with every iteration of the team, we stayed hungry. And I think it's due to the amount of roster changes we made. Could have, like, honestly, it may have been a blessing in disguise, because with every new roster came a new honeymoon phase where we're motivated and we want to get better and like this, and we got to win at this team. And you know what I mean? Like, we have Rossi and Dazzle who just got cut from FaZe and Shopify, and they're hungry. They want to win, you know. But the best thing that happened that I'm thankful for is definitely that, you know, throughout every iteration of the team, it's always been like a good environment. You know, we always stayed motivated, hungry, and tried to get better. And at no point in the season, up until the end at least, where, you know, we won relegation. Winning relegation, by the way, was like the most bittersweet feeling. Like, we won, but it was like, oh, whatever. Like, I think none of us cared, because like we knew that there's like a 6 months break. But yeah, everything before that, you know, what motivated me was definitely just the environment always being good.
Um, you mentioned about the relegation thing, and it sort of does bring about one more question that I want to ask, um, regarding about the tier
Oops.
two changes and how it's been addressed a few days ago by Leo Faria, and the changes that is in store for the tier two level challengers level. What do you think about those changes that are going to be made?
I didn't. I think I kind of know what the changes are. I didn't fully look at those changes, but I know they're making this. They're like adjusting the schedule to where the season's a bit longer and more spread out evenly. And there's a shorter off season, I think, right? Is what it was. Something like that. But I think it's good. Yeah, I think the biggest complaint that people had, especially we had, was, okay, we won relegation. Now what? Now we're, you know, 6 months. We have nothing to do. Almost every org realized the same thing. Was like, yeah, there's no point of us staying in Valorant for 6 months and not and like paying these guys for nothing. Like, no org in their right mind, unless you're, you know, wealthy or have a super team already, is gonna keep those players. Like, that's why Mad Lions dip. That's why FaZe dip. That's why TSM dip. It's because there's no point. You're just, you know, dumping money for 6 months. Had this off season been like a few months, then yeah. But like 6 months is a lot of time to just pay people to do nothing. No, not do nothing, but people also like need to realize 6 months. Like, there's not even any point of practicing for those like first 3 months, because the game is gonna change so much. Valorant changes so much as it is in like 2 months, to where like if you're, that's why we took the break after relegation, because
Yeah.
there's just no point of scrimming, because like the game's gonna change. It's gonna be completely different in 3 months anyway. So why scrim? Um, so yeah, 6 months is just way too long. Like, it just makes no sense. Because one, yeah, there's no point of scrimming up until like the first 3 months anyway. The season's not starting for 6, and two, like, orgs aren't gonna pay that much. Like, orgs aren't gonna be down to, you know, do nothing for 6 months for the players and pay them during that time.
Hmm. Yeah, of course. And got a few more questions before we wrap it up. We mentioned a little bit about, or I mentioned a little bit about the fact that you got Frost in as the coach of Talon, and I
Mhm.
believe Boy is still there as an analyst for there. What's it been like working with those individuals when it comes to preparing for the season and screaming and competing in in off season events, if any?
Working with Frost, like I said, I had experience working with him in the past. With Nearest Airport, he was my previous coach. I think during the trials, it went pretty well. I think me and him already kind of clicked on things. It was mainly for, I think, the Thai people, and the APAC players. Sorry, I have to sneeze. It went away. Okay. I think it was mainly for me. I was comfortable working with Frost, because I've already worked with him in the past. We already see eye to eye and, you know, most things. But I think for the players, specifically the APAC players, I think it was a little bit of a struggle, because one, new language, right? You're getting coached, and then two, the coaching style is much different. Because I think last year they didn't do as much server time, or they didn't do as much VOD review or theory. They would just scrim and then have a couple minutes of like 30 minutes to an hour of like review. But I don't think they did as much VOD review as we've been doing. So it's been a little bit of a culture change for them. Because we're like I said, we're trying to play more tactically. So obviously it's more about reviewing and learning from the mistakes than just endlessly scrimming, right? Because you're going to learn a lot more just watching the tape back.
Mhm. Of course, and that said, taking the focus back onto the entire talent team and how they're going to tackle 2024. Um, what is one thing that you would want people slash fans, fellow players, anything else to observe when it comes to looking forward to this talent team for 2024?
2024. I'm gonna do my best. I know we're all gonna do our best. I have been the underdog for the last 2 years of my career. On every team I've been on, Turtle Troop, Complexity. I've been seen as an underdog, right? So I'm used to right all people that I think we're being ranked pretty low right now. Most people don't expect much from us this year, but I don't mind it. I think I will say personally that on every team I've been on, no matter what people think of me, I've always done everything I can to work hard. So if you know me, I'm gonna do everything I can to win. Uh, and like I said, top four I think is definitely doable. That's what I expect. And if it doesn't happen, there's always next year. But more importantly, like this first year is to just get comfortable as a team. Um, like I said, we're going in with a disadvantage. We have less practice, and we have what do you call it? I think most people are keeping it core, but we actually only have 2 out of 5 from last year, so we don't really have a core. But I still think, despite that, with me and Ben, I'm very confident that us having the chemistry we do, and coming from like an NA background, NA playstyle, that we can definitely be that sort of unique team next year and catch people off guard.
And hopefully you guys are able to do well 2024 and actually be able
Mhm.
to accomplish your goals later on at this moment in time next year. And so
Mhm.
thank you so much, Governor, for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Got any final shout outs to give?
Uh, you put me on the spot. This is the hardest question you've asked so far. uh, Shout out to my parents. I love them. All right.
All right, perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Governor. I really appreciate it.